Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of EOXS's Stories on Steel. This is a steel industry podcast featuring the big names of the business and the advice/stories they've accrued over their years as insiders. Steel has been a vital component of American life for well over a century, and the men and women who've helped it flourish are a diverse group of innovators full of interesting tales. We hope to share some of said tales here with you today. Thanks again to EOXS for providing this platform. In addition to this show, they are bringing businesses online by providing a standardized digital workspace for all your steel-related needs. Today, we welcome the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at TW Metals, Bob Mraz. Bob, thank you so much for giving us your time today. How you doing?
Super fine, Kevin, and thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, so I would love we love to start out just by giving our listeners a little bit of a better view as to our guests. So why don't you introduce us to yourself and how you found your way into the steel industry?
Well, I found my way into the steel industry many years ago, quite by accident. I had graduated college a semester early, and I had planned to go to graduate school in the fall, and I needed a job. And so I went around to a number of companies and they asked, well, will you be working here for many years? And my answer was, well, no, I actually am only going to work for 8 months or so. And I couldn't get a job. So I went to this one company, TW Metals, and by this time I was desperate to get work. And they said, well, we're looking for people who will retire with us. And believe me, Kevin, that was actually a question many years ago. They were looking for long-term employees. And so I took a plunge. I said, hey, I'll be there for decades. And well, the joke's on me. I never went to graduate school at that point, and I'm still with the company decades later.
How long exactly has it been with TW Metals, if you don't mind my asking? I'm sure
Well,
you look like you just finished college 2 days ago, so it could be
well,
any amount of time.
I did finish my MBA about 5 years ago, at least that's current. But I actually started 48 years ago. So when I tell that to customers and friends and so on, it's wow, is that even possible anymore? And my answer is, if you love what you're doing and it's the right company, it's not only possible, it's probable.
Well, that's a lovely sentiment. And how does it feel going from sort of the ground floor to, now you're currently at the TW space station, so that's got to be really cool. For our audio only listeners, Bob has graced us with a very cool green screen, making him our first intergalactic guest here on the podcast. But yeah, give us a little bit more insight, if you could, as to those early days working at TW. Like, what was the work they had you doing back then?
Well, back then I started at the very lofty position of assistant inside sales person. And then from there, I became a salesperson on the inside and then the outside, a branch manager, a regional manager, a project manager, and a regional general manager, and then vice president. And I can tell you that while the technology has vastly changed from when I started, and you can imagine, I won't go back to those days when the earth was still cooling, but from those days until now, the technology has made a tremendous difference. But this is true. People in their core values, the beliefs, the things that matter, honesty, integrity, openness, that hasn't changed. It hasn't changed in all those 48 years, and I suspect it never will.
So when you were just starting out, what exactly had you in like what was your experience working with the higher ups as you were starting out in TW? Were they very helpful in breaking you into the process and the industry, or did you have to do a lot of learning on your own?
It was all on the job training. It was a much smaller company now. We're a privately owned company, and our sales are now north of $750 million. Back then, it was just a couple hundred million. We only had 2 locations. Now we have 36 in 9 different countries. So I've seen that growth. There wasn't really a HR department, nor was there a formalized training program. But one thing that has always been the hallmark of TW Metals has been its culture. Back then, you learn through osmosis. You learn from salespeople, from the purchasing managers. You learn from the senior management, and there was always a collaboration before that was even a word. There was a camaraderie that people just wanted to help each other. And one of the reasons why we have, I'm not the only one who has 40 plus years in the company. It has been our company culture that has really been instrumental in the development of our success. So really, back then, it was learn as you go. And I like to say that some of my best teachers were customers from the Fortune 500 companies who taught me the right way to do business.
Well, that's having that kind of experience supporting you definitely has to be very comforting for anybody going into any new industry, you know. So it seems like you've taken those lessons to heart even now. You've taught you just mentioned about culture, company culture being very important at TW Metals. How lately with the pandemic and the different stages we've had to experience, how has the company culture changed to sort of react to the state of the world?
Well, that's a great question. Like most successful companies, you have to be agile enough and adapt and have the resources to change. And the culture, of course, it's greatly facilitated by being in the same office face to face, being at our global sales meeting, being at all the regional meetings. That certainly helps the camaraderie, the during the work and after work experiences. But we found something, I think I found something that was very encouraging, that now the majority of what we do is online. It's Zoom, it's Teams, it's Skype, and yet that camaraderie still exists. Now, uh, perhaps it's because it was so great before, it's just a carryover. I don't know if we would have started as a digital company, if you will, it would have been that good, but it runs so deep and so wide in our company. It not only continues to grow, but as we've added new people, and we've added a number of new people over the past couple of months since the pandemic, they seem to pick up on it right away. So I think, it starts from the top down, and it's pervasive, and it's something that you intuitively know, but it's also something you feel. And it's, just like we're talking now, this is how we talk to each other. I talk to my boss and my boss's boss, and I talk to the people who work in the departments I manage.
I feel like some of your higher ups would do well if they could contact some of the old grocery stores I used to work for, because would love to. I would love to be spoken to like this. It's definitely a level of respect. Would you say respect is a big part of that camaraderie that gets built between all different levels of the company?
Absolutely. And the fact that that came true in just a few moments that we had to speak, I think, proves the point that respect, founded on integrity and founded on honesty and transparency. We're encouraged to go out there and swing for the fences every time we get it back. And look, we strike out sometimes. We hit a lot of foul balls, and they don't yank us from the game. They're supportive to us. When we get back to the dugout, it's a attaboy, good try. You'll get them next time, and that really creates an entrepreneurial atmosphere among everyone in the company.
I think especially during COVID, this time of pandemic and uncertainty, that kind of compassion is definitely appreciated even more so. You know, the ability to get up off the mat, like get that other chance, get more at bats. You know, I feel like that's really what a lot of people need right now. So it's really good to hear that a company is taking that approach to dealing with people at all levels. That's really good to hear. Let's talk a little bit more about marketing. Now, what can you tell us about the way steel is marketed now as opposed to maybe when you were just starting out at TW? Like, has there been a significant change?
Oh, absolutely. And once again, driven a lot by technology. When I started out, there were, well, relatively fewer companies, and they each had found their own niche. There were companies that sold specialty metals like TW metals. Some sold carbon, some sold flat products, and on and on. So there was a lot of differentiation. But as time progressed, more and more companies began to add more and more products, and we began to compete a lot more than we did early on. But right now, we're in the process, like all companies are, we're trying to reach 5 different generations. We're trying to sell something to that person who lives on the web, and people who aren't that familiar to it. So we try to have a cross-generational marketing approach. So we still, although we have very sophisticated online marketing approaches, we still rely on snail mail, phone calls, outreach. So we have a lot of different solutions for all different types of customer, but we're not trying to support any one single generation. Right now, that third tier buyer stuck away in a large company is going to be tomorrow's vice president of procurement. We want to make sure that they remember us. And one other thing, if I could add to that, is historically, in the old days, an inquiry would come in, you would put your price on, you would send it back, and there may or may not be negotiations. Today, it's done all digitally. It's quicker, it's faster. There's tremendous more flexibility in the things we can offer a customer. Things like quality and service are always going to be fundamental, but the ability to help a customer understand their spend with a distributor gives them leverage, and that giving them that leverage gives us a benefit. So that's one of the things we try to do, is provide a solution to their problems that they know they have, or in some cases, they don't know they have.
So a lot of this is anticipating needs, it sounds like, just because not you will have to come into a customer with more knowledge than they do. Does that sound about right?
Well, Kevin, you said it much better than I did, uh, but that's absolutely true. Uh, the buyers we speak to today have a variety of jobs. They are not only buying the raw materials, which is our category of product, but they're also buying chemicals and safety equipment. They may be the safety director. They're multitasking. So for us to take our knowledge of this one specific area and help them grow in their job and become more valuable for their company is one of the things that we can do for them, and helping them helps us.
That circle of mutual need, it definitely feels like that's important to remember from a marketing standpoint, you know, to keep the humanity about it. Tell us a little bit about the customers that TW services. Like, who are you typically marketing to? I know you said 5 different generations, but of the people in those generations, what are they doing that will require TW to come in and help?
Okay, excellent. Uh, Not that anyone outside of the metals industry thinks this way, but the metals that we sell, which are classified as specialty metals, it's ubiquitous. We have a classic example. We sell a piece of aluminum block that is used as a control device that raises and lowers the landing gear of an airplane. that same material and essentially the same dimensions is used by a specialty company that manufactures custom made flusher handles for toilet bowls. So when I say that the material is ubiquitous, it can be used for anything. Now, the products that we sell primarily go to the space and aerospace industry. It's not only in the airframes, it's in the engines and in the components and the landing gears. Beyond that, we sell the medical, and we just had a number of great success stories in the medical space with the urgency to ramp up a lot of the equipment that would be used during the pandemic. So that was a big growth area for us. Also, chemical and petrochemical products. Uh, we sell the raw materials, the bits and pieces that are made into the components and the parts that make those companies successful.
Does there, we've dealt with people, or we've interviewed people involved in aerospace and other stressful fields before on this podcast, but and so I always like to get a bit more insight. Does knowing that the components you're providing are going to such a high stakes endeavor, like moving people from the Earth to outer space and operating in a complete vacuum, does that ever really get to you guys on the marketing level, like knowing that the stuff you're selling is going to be used for that kind of purpose? Like, is it ever sobering?
I'm going to give you a definite yes and no. Uh, it is a definite yes that the whole company has to be geared to the highest level of customer. As an example, we sell, as I indicated, companies that aren't in the aerospace industry. We have about 50% of our business is in commercial. So our company and our standards, our compliance, our quality, our concern and care for details is all geared as though we're selling every customer at the highest quality and service level. In other words, if you come in and you want to buy just a length of pipe from us for some industrial purpose, it gets the same level of quality, inspection, and compliance as if you were buying something that was scheduled to become a part that flies on a spacecraft. We don't have two levels. We work to the highest level for everyone. And so we don't recognize when it needs to be extra special and when it needs just to be commercial. Everything for us is treated as though it is going to be used in a critical application. So it becomes part of the way we do business everywhere for everyone.
That's well, that's I appreciate your honesty, just because if it were me, I would never be able to get over the fact, oh my gosh, I really hope this is going to be in a spaceship. This is going to be on a plane's landing gear, the thing on the plane that's going to probably get more pressure than anything else in that initial descent. But it's very cool, your approach. I really do think that's, I don't know, it speaks to your experience. But let's go back a little bit to marketing, and specifically, you talked a little bit about how digital media and technology has affected things on your end. Where do you see e-commerce growing in the steel industry in the next like 10, 15 years? Like, where do you project that's going to go?
Oh, I think it's absolutely going to be the way business is done. Uh, and right now, all the companies like ourselves that have the resources and the vision to see where it's going are really beginning to gear up for that eventuality. I think when you look at how a lot of the other products in the world and services are sold, things like insurance and homes and mortgages and cars, visibility, transparency, the ability to compare and contrast easily is really the standard now. When I log on to one of the sites I'm going to buy from, I get the option to look at one item from five different people at various price points. And I get to pick the one that I have the most confidence in, that has a reasonable price, and that I know. So, really, as marketers today, we have to make sure that we're visible to our customers, that we give them the types of information and services so that when they do come out shopping, they're already leaning in our direction. I think that the research would show that online shoppers, they have already uh, just about decided who they're going to buy from uh, before they send out the RFQ. You want to be that company they're thinking about, and you want to put yourself in a position to offer that type of value.
And what are some of the most important ways you've learned to position your company to provide that value?
Well, we in our website and in our marketing campaigns, uh, much of what the customer is going to buy is preordained by the specifications that are required for that product. Your point about aerospace. Aerospace has thousands of specifications that specifically tell you how a product will be formed under how a product will perform under almost every given circumstance. So what we want to be able to do is to demonstrate to the customer in a user friendly, easy way that we are that type of company that can provide those types of guarantees and certainties. As an example, Kevin, while we do have a generalized website, a very nice one, when we do our advertising, we tend to redirect those customers within industries to our landing page. So, as an example, if you're in the space industry and you see some of our advertising, when you click the link, it won't take you to the general website. It'll take you to a specific landing page that you would look familiar to you in the types of images, in the language, in the products, in points of interest, in technology. That would be helpful to you. And from there, you can go and look at anything else within our company as far as products, services. But when you first arrive, it's a very welcoming environment. So we don't want to be just a general store. We want to be that specialty supplier to the dozens of industries that we serve.
I think that's a really interesting point of view. And again, I'm as a marketing student myself, I just got my unlike you, I actually went and got my master's degree just because the job market's out here a little bit dicey. You got to keep getting those degrees, and we can't all be as talented as you. So we gotta go and do that hard work. But I think that the flexibility you need when dealing with customers is something that doesn't get talked to about a lot, especially in an industry as traditional as steel. And also, do you think that because of how ubiquitous the material can be, steel is traditionally seen as a very stagnant industry, just because advances come in spurts and very like randomly almost. It's more on the chemical side of things. Do you think that the nature of the product has prevented some needed changes in the industry, if that makes sense?
Yes, there was a time when there was just the basic metals. Then they evolved into specialty metals, which is our space. And then they're marketed now in in ways that are very specific to individual companies. As an example, uh, the mills which manufacture the metal, they want to sell things by the tons, and you have to be astute enough to order months in advance, sometimes a year and a half in advance to get the metal you want. And they don't want you to buy a piece of it. They want 20 tons as a purchase order. So what the role of distribution is to anticipate the need, bring in the material, And now customers are all geared towards one piece flow, lean manufacturing, cash velocity, just in time deliveries. So the technology is to support them in a way that gives them what they need, where they want it, when they want it, no more than that, but definitely no less, and always on time. So what they're doing is they're managing their cash flow, and we act as a part of their company in order to get the metal in at the quantity they need as quickly as possible so they can ship it out the door as quickly as possible and get paid. So what we've seen is a tremendous decrease in the amount of raw materials stocks that the companies actually keep on the floor. They rely on distributors like TW Metals to do that for them.
Do you know off the top of your head of any like pain points in the supply chain that have stuck out to you? Just because it seems like you're naturally thinking there on the marketing side of things.
Right. Uh, well, there are a few things. One is that every industry, everywhere that uses raw materials, you have to imagine we're a tier four. Now, the tier threes, they make parts, and the tier twos take the parts and make components. The tier ones make systems, and the OEMs are at the pinnacle, make the things that fly away or drive away. Or so through that chain of events, there is a certain uh, inability to accurately take the forecast from one tier to the other, so that when it flows down to the tier four, the forecast oftentimes is not exactly as crisp as it should be. It In the 48 years that I've been in this business, I can think of 2 or 3 days in my whole career where supply and demand were actually in balance. Uh, every other day, we either have not enough material and we're scrambling to get it, or too much material and we're looking for new sources to sell it to. So, if there is one thing, if there was, because of the nature of how the supply chain is structured, forecast accuracy causes probably our greatest challenge.
Man, it's good to know that you're thinking that far ahead. And I think as someone that's been in the industry as long as you, that kind of thought process is only going to help the industry as a whole, just because we're currently facing down problems that no one ever really thought we'd see in our lifetime, or maybe a few did, and they were the smart ones. We're running out of time here, just because I know you have to get back to the space station, and they need you to keep things running up there. But did you have any closing thoughts on, let's say, anybody looking to get started in the steel industry and the marketing side of things? Any pieces of advice that you think you could have used when you were just starting out?
Well, I never really thought, as you could tell by my opening story, about the metals distribution business, the metals industry being a career. But yet, when you step back and look at the fundamentals of manufacturing, what isn't made from metals? Of course, you have plastics and woods, but it is a fundamental building block of everything in infrastructures, transportation equipment, uh, anything you can think of. It is a fascinating yet somewhat undiscovered industry. I would encourage anyone who hears this podcast or knows of this industry to look at it as a really fantastic, growth oriented career for someone who is imaginative and creative. And the way the world is changing as quickly as it's changing, we're going to need that fresh infusion of new ideas, the younger generation to come in, because our industry has a fair amount of 48-year veterans. So I'm not the only one. And by the way, Kevin, if this gig doesn't work out for you, I think you do great in our industry.
Well, truly, that means a lot. And similarly, I had very little knowledge of the steel industry before starting this show, but being able to talk to experienced folks like yourself and others has made me really appreciate how important it is, and how diverse the people involved in all aspects of it are. And if TW is ever hiring, I got a wedding I got to plan for and bills to pay, so I would love to help in any way I can.
Call me.
Will do, sir. All right, but yeah, again, Rob, thank you so much, or Bob, sorry. Does anyone call you Rob? I know that's a
My my mom called me Rob. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I liked it. You can call me Rob. That'll be our special name.
Okay. All right, Rob. Thank you very much for stopping by and giving us so much good information here on the show. To all of our listeners and viewers, this has been another insightful episode of EOXS's Stories on Steel. Thanks again to Bob/Rob for stopping by. And remember, whether galvanized or hot rolled, EOXS will provide a marketplace to take any steel business to the online sector. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Kevin.
Oh, thank
Happy
you as well.
holidays.